Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. Let's start off discussing Conor Benn and Peter Dobson. Benn won the fight on points. I had it 10-2. I think anything between 11-1 and 9-3 is an acceptable sort of scorecard. Dobson had some success in there in various rounds, but it was very sporadic success. And this is a guy who, although he came in undefeated, if you actually look at his box rec, you'll come across a little tab that says TCL Pro. And the TCL Pro record is 3-7. Now, the way TCL works is that little tournament that Michael Hunter entered, whereby you fight different guys on the same night, but you're fighting one round each time. And so you end up fighting a round, you lose the opening round and you lose the fight. That's it. You move on to somebody else. And that prize fighter sort of format, but over one round rather than three, requires you to be able to go to work quickly. And because Peter Dobson's a guy that's quite cute and he's a thinking fighter and he's looking for openings and he's trying to be smart with the shots that he picks, and he's low output, that style doesn't suit him at all. Well, when he's in there against Conor Benn, you can expect, therefore, that Conor Benn early on is going to start going to work, showing his explosiveness, his athleticism. He's very fast, Conor Benn, and you're just going to see a massive mismatch from a physical, athletic perspective. And you saw that. As Peter Dobson then starts to find little patterns that he can exploit, he starts to have more success. Now, even then, he's not putting enough work. There's not enough output there for him to be winning those rounds. Ben's still edging them. But if you're talking about the know-how, Darren Barker post-fight said Conor Benn had a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more know-how. I don't agree with Darren Barker. Conor Benn had more athleticism for sure, but Peter Dobson's the one that had the more know-how. The problem is the way he fights, it's only conducive to one of two things. You can either be a very high-level sparring partner because you know how to survive, you're able to give a guy work, you're able to exploit certain holes in his game. He'll move away from that sparring session, look back and think, why was I caught with that shot consistently? Why was I not able to have success here and there? So he makes for a really good sparring partner. Or alternatively, if you're a big power puncher, then you've got the luxury of being able to survive in certain situations, find openings, set up those openings and take a guy out. Because he's not like that, you can't rely on those small individual moments of success to swing the fight in your favor. But let's talk from the perspective of Conor Benn. Where were the limitations? Because the truth is, it wasn't a great performance from Conor Benn. And although he won the fight wide, if he was in there with one of the top guys in the division, he would have got taken out tonight, in my opinion. He was caught with far too many shots flush consistently. You see, one of the things that makes Conor Benn so dangerous is the fact that he can be chaotic and he's very athletic. Not too dissimilar from his father, Nigel Benn. That speed that he's got, a lot of it comes by the method in which he enters the pocket. You see, he'll hop in, but he's almost jumping off the floor and he's almost launching with that back foot first. So that back foot will come close to the front foot and then he comes forward. And what that does is two things. It means he can almost cover the ground quickly. But what happens is when he's then going to plant his feet, because he likes to throw hard shots from a wide stance, just before he's about to hop into range, that front foot steps forward and he creates a very wide base. So what happens is you notice the tell, right? Conor Benn's chasing me. Now he's planted. Now he's going to work. And because he's fast, even if you see the tell, you're often going to come off second best when it comes to the exchanges. Having said that, because there's fairly consistent pattern in what he does in the way he lets go of his attacks, you can still time those attacks even if he's faster. And what you started to see is that early in the fight, Conor Benn was leading with that 1-2. So he'd run after Dobson and he's hopping in and then all of a sudden he sets those feet and he lets go of the jab and then he launches that big right hand. And what you see is when he throws the right hand, he really steps in with a jab, the right hand comes down. It's almost as though he's shooting diagonally. And from there, much like Munguia, who we spoke about the other week, he's setting up the left hook to come up from there. The problem that he has is that Dobson spotted this and he was hiding behind the shoulder. So the first jab lands, fine. But then when I know that right hand's coming, because it's coming from that trajectory and there's a loop on it, I can just roll with the shot and it's going to take something off the shot. Now, at points, he was ducking below the waist, Dobson, which you're not allowed to do. I keep going on about this. It's a pet hate of mine. I can't stand it because you are disengaging. It's against the rules. You're not allowed to be doing this. You're not allowed to put your head by your own knee. The guy can't punch you there. And I have to respect the referee because at one point, Conor Benn caught him on the back of the head. And the referee, who I thought did a great job, said to him, you're ducking into it. You're complaining, but it's because of you. This is happening because of you. Fighters should be doing really what Conor Benn's doing more consistently. If he's going to start cheating like that, essentially, or bending the rules, shall we say, and ducking below the belt, and you've got to hit him in the back of the ear or it lands on the back of the head, that's his problem. You need to throw that shot. So he was doing that. But once he started to realize the timing of it, rather than getting caught as you're ducking down or ducking down too early so that you're then getting clattered, when you're rolling with it, it's taking something off of the shot. And from that position, when you're turning away from it, you're actually loading up with your own counter. And that's when you started to see Dobson set up the right hand to come back. So after a few rounds, you started to see Conor Benn getting caught in between his own work. He had the right hand taken away from him for large portions. You heard Eddie Hearn at the end of the fight saying he didn't really land a right hand clean. He landed a few clean, but one of the reasons was because that was spotted from Dobson. The other thing is that when Dobson would then follow Conor Benn out, Conor Benn would jump up and he'd to exit, and he'd be quite tall in the air. And because Dobson was coming from a low position and shaping up as though he was going to go to the body, on more than one occasion, Conor Benn would have a hand up, and as he's coming out, he's thinking the shot's coming to the ribs, and he'd lower his hand. And instead, Dobson's shaping upstairs and catching him upside the side of the head. He's not hiding behind the shoulder, covering up, making himself a hard target. So although he's turning off at the shoulder, so he's not a broad target, he's tall, which makes him a long target. Whether you're going to land to the body or land to the head, there was an option there for Dobson when he was following Conor Benn out. So Conor Benn was getting touched a little bit too much. The other area that Dobson had success is when he was getting right up close to Conor and he was actually leaning on him, not exchanging that inner mid-range. In those areas, Conor was doing well. When he was bumping him and leaning on him, and at 1 or 2 points, he put him on the ropes or in the corner, you could see that Conor Benn's not as physically strong. He's outsized at this weight category. He's not a big welterweight like Boots Ennis, for instance. And I know they weighed in, at 150 pounds or whatever, and he weighed in on the night at 170. That's probably to do with him, bulking up all that time ago and then trying to shrink his body down. He's not a big guy, Conor Benn, naturally speaking, his frame. And you could see body to body, he didn't quite have that strength in there. And so there's certain areas where other fighters are going to be looking at. Boots Ennis will be thinking, the way I roll with punches and come back with counters and the predictability of what Conor Benn's doing, I'm going to be able to capitalize on all this. Now, Sims spotted this and he said to him, move towards his own right, to his right. Now, Darren Barker was talking about getting his right foot more to his own right, but I don't actually think that's what Sims was saying. I think Sims had said to Dobson's right. In other words, he wanted to see him slide across, which I liked the idea of. Why? Because when you're trying to shoot that right hand and he's spotting the trajectory of it and he's rolling with it, if you're positioning your body more this way and you stop putting a loop on the right hand and it comes straight, instead of the right hand coming over my shoulder where I can hide, because you're more in front of me now, more in line with my center line, that right hand's going to come through here. Now I have to turn even further in order to hide behind the shot, which then gives you the opportunity to step around. If I don't turn enough, you're going to catch me through the middle. And Conor Benn did make that adjustment. So there were a couple of adjustments there that he made. The other thing that I wanted to see a little bit more of is the double left hook. There were moments where he had real success with that. But again, because he's bending away to the side, catch him with that double left hook. And so I wanted to see him use that a little bit more. But overall, look, it was a comfortable victory for Conor Benn. Overall, he was able to get 12 rounds in the bag, something that he's never done before in his career. So that's a good experience. But for me, I just was a little bit worried about his lack of ability to spot a pattern from when he was getting hit with that right hand on his exit. It was too consistent before he reacted to it. And he was also throwing the right hand in a way whereby it was being deflected far too often. Not everything has to be off of a load up. There was one moment which I really liked from Conor. He threw a left jab. Then he feinted as though he was going to throw the right hand, which made the roll, the attempt to roll, the anticipation from Dobson. Instead of throwing the right hand, he took a hop step back and he threw a jab and he caught him with it. Now he's moved. Now you're waiting for him to move. After he throws that jab, Dobson panics. And instead of coming back with a counter, knowing that Ben's probably too far out, he then ducked down. That's the moment you should throw the right hand because he's reacted prior to you launching. Instead of using more feints, therefore, to shoot with the jab in order to get Dobson to try and anticipate and react and you can catch him out, he went back to loading up again. You've got to be a little bit cuter and smarter with the way you're setting up your power. He's got a really nice jab to the chest as Conor Benn, but you don't have to throw it hard every time. He'll either throw a hard jab to the chest, which stabilizes an opponent, makes them wary about coming in, keeps them honest, or he'll get low and then shoot the up jab. Almost like David Lemieux, he used to do that. Shotgun jab, but he's not dictating the fight with a jab. And so just because you've got power and you're a puncher, it doesn't mean everything has to be hard. Vary up that power, use more feints, set up your power punches, and then you'll be more efficient. That's my take on Conor Benn. He's got a lot of work to do, in my opinion, if he's going to take on the top guys in the sport. I know that post-fight, they were really trying to push the Eubank fight because in some ways, it's a no-lose situation for Benn. Big money fight. And if he loses, well, Eubank's a lot bigger than him, right? If he has to go for other welterweights and he steps up, in my opinion, at this stage against the highest level, he's going to come unstuck. And the problem is, how do you then rebuild from that position? See what I'm saying? So for me, Conor Benn still needs work. Let me know what you think. Let's move on from that now and talk about Joshua Buatsi against Dan AZEEZ. I wasn't able to bring a technical breakdown or preview for the fight. I've just been too busy this week. But I did put out on Twitter pre-fight. Look, I'm sorry to everybody that's been asking me, but my prediction is that Buatsi will stop him. And I know it raised a few eyebrows. Some of you out there were saying, no way, this is a points sort of fight. Well, look, he did drop him on a couple of occasions, and I know the canvas was slippery in certain areas. To me, they looked like legitimate knockdowns, but he also had him seriously hurt in that last round. And, he seemed to take his foot off the gas. I know Chris Lloyd was saying he felt that maybe it was out of respect that he decided to take his foot off the gas, being friends, he didn't want to take him out. Or maybe he just thought, you know what, that Flurry's definitely put this fight in the bag for me. There's no need for me to go and take a risk getting clipped with something. But the truth is, I felt that maybe Buatsi just sort of let him off the hook a little bit there. That's not to take anything away from Dan Azeez, because up until those last couple of rounds, it was nip and tuck. I felt that the viewers' card was a little bit too wide. I had it in the end being 8-4 to Buatsi, with the last 2 rounds going to Buatsi. So after 10, I've got it 6-4 going into that final couple of rounds. And George Groves had seen it the same way as I was seeing it. So it was nip and tuck. And one of the reasons it was nip and tuck, in my opinion, is that Buatsi's got this weakness that he continues to fail to rectify. And I really like Buatsi. I think he's really talented. But after he does his own work, far too often he doesn't get his head off the line. He stays on the line. And you saw that he was using some really nice shots to counter what Azeez was trying to do before he would do it. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. But then he'd stay stationary in the pocket. And Azeez is able to come straight back at him and have success of his own. He's got to start pivoting around, stepping around people, getting them to reset. Instead, they were constantly rotating with each other. But it was actually Azeez who was often working and then moving and stepping out and getting Buatsi to turn with him. And you wouldn't expect that, because Azeez is known as this, tough dude who's going to come in there and put it on you. Well, Buatsi's known as a technical boxer who was a highly decorated Olympian. At times, he was just a little bit too stationary for me. But what I did like about Buatsi, what I mean by he was trying to get his own work off to stop Azeez doing what he wanted to do, is that Azeez is very good at certain things, but he's basic. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, for the fundamentals of the sport, to get to the very top, you need to master the basics. You can be an elite fighter that has mastered the basics and nothing else. So it's not an insult. But what I mean is that the method in which he operates is quite consistent. It's not a guy who's going to have loads of special effects and show you different sides to him. He's a shorter guy. He's very rugged. He's thick for the weight, massive thighs, massive back, massive chest. And what he tends to do is make himself smaller because he knows he's at a height disadvantage, but he's got deceptively long arms. And from that situation where he makes himself smaller, he crouches, he uses that as a springboard and he'll launch from there. He'll come low and launch an up jab. And from that entry and that linear entry, he works. Now, if you're going to be getting him to turn, he needs to then turn with you, reset for that new entry. And he's actually not bad at doing that. But because he will often step in with that high guard and he'll step in with that foot to lead off with that entry jab, as he comes forward, he's often susceptible to both an uppercut and a left hook. And you could see, this is why I thought the stoppage would come, because the left hooks that Buatsi was landing to the head couldn't miss. And the uppercut was landing fairly consistently. Not as consistently as I thought it would land, but it was landing fairly consistently. Where Buatsi was very clever, though, is that because Dan Azeez likes to change that level and come low and duck under your shots, and because of the way he operates, that means he's loaded up for his own shots. Buatsi would rip hooks into the body, left hook, right hook. So he's ripping them low. He knows if Azeez is going to enter tall, I'm going to land to the body. If he bends forward, I'm still going to land to the body. Whereas if I'm starting to target the head too much, he could potentially come underneath that. I just need to target the body to stop that forward momentum. And he was doing a lot of brutal work to the body. Now, like I said, Azeez was doing very well in getting him to reset and work immediately after Buatsi would work. So he was having his own success in return. But for me, the more clinical work in terms of the accurate work was mainly coming from Buatsi in the latter middle half of the fight. Up until, I don't know, I think it was the 8th round, up until the 6th round, I had him level. I had him 3-3 after 6 rounds. Then I think I had Buatsi going up 5-3 and it was nip and tuck, and I had it 6-4 by the time it got to the 10th. The point is, early on, when it was a technical boxing match, it was a good close fight. But I just felt like Buatsi had a little bit too much. And then when Azeez tried to really put it on him, that's when you saw Buatsi was a little bit more durable. He was able to take certain shots where you're thinking that's a monster shot, and he's able to take them and come straight back as well. They were both coming straight back at each other. But Buatsi he was able to take shots, man, big, heavy shots. And a lot of people don't realize how good Buatsi's chin is, in my opinion. This is a very rugged, durable guy. And when you see him, when you stand next to him, he's not a big guy. He's quite wiry in his frame, but you can see like there's a tightness there. He's a very solid, durable man. And I know he's been hurt against KHALID and stuff. He's been buzzed. But that's because he gets caught with certain flush shots, because he doesn't get off the line as well, in my opinion, as he has the talent to be able to do after his own work. But when he is going to be hit, he does absorb the shots very well. But one thing I found a little bit concerning, if you're a Buatsi fan, and it's hard to know whether he's just saying this because they're friends and, he wants to give him some props because he was very keen to do that post-fight, is that he was basically saying, oh man, Dan Azeez made me fight every minute of the fight. He didn't give me any time to rest. A guy like Stepien, he was just there to survive, whereas, Dan really made me work. For the first half of the fight, although it was really good, it was a technical boxing match. You know, it was more after that the tempo started to rise and it started to become a little bit more incessant. The point is, if you're in there against a guy like Beterbiev or even Bivol, who's not as heavy-handed but knows how to apply constant foot pressure, you're probably going to be made to work a lot harder for a lot longer. So I do wonder about that, you know, the stamina issue. Did he have more gears to go to? At times, it looked like he was content to hold his feet and pick his shots. Was that tactical? Or was that him not actually picking shots, but taking breathers, dictating tempo? Let me know what you think. But listen, I'm looking forward to seeing Buatsi step up and go to the next level now. And, you know, there are still some brilliant domestic clashes to be made. Who would complain about seeing Anthony Yarde against Buatsi, right? That's a great fight. In terms of the battle of the losers against Buatsi, how about Aziz versus Craig Richards? That's another brilliant fight I'd love to see. Or maybe we're going to see Buatsi step up now and face Dimitri Bivol or Beterbiev, the winner of that fight. So whichever way you go, there's a lot of exciting stuff to come from these two. Let me quickly move on to another couple of fighters. Adam Azim, he got a 5th round stoppage win over ENOCK POULSEN. To be honest with you, this flatters to deceive because Poulsen had dislocated his shoulder during the fight and he just couldn't continue. Up until that point, Adam Azim was in control, but it wasn't going all his own way. I mean, he was racking up the points, but you knew that Poulsen was trying to take him to the latter half of the fight and start to go to work there. So we didn't really see them exchange in areas which would have been Poulsen's sort of game. But Poulsen was making him overreach. There are certain times, particularly when he throws the left hand at him, where his feet come off the floor, he jumps into shots, he launches into shots. And when Poulsen was taking a step back, just as about the launches is about to come, you'd see that he'd fall short and he was getting countered. Now, why am I bringing this up in a fight that he won pretty comfortably? Well, fairly recently, Shane McGuigan was given an interview. I can't remember for the life of me who it was. I think it was with Boxing Social, but don't hold me to that. The interviewer had referred to ISMAEL BARROSO as a world-level fighter, a potential opponent for Adam Azim. And you had this, I'm just being real here, I know there are a lot of Shane McGuigan fans out there. It was almost this arrogant sort of comment from Shane. He sort of looked to the side at someone, he smiled, he said, "You think Barroso's world level?" He was almost dismissive of Barroso. But then he started talking about, you know, there's no point in going that way because we'll go there, we'll win a world title, and then, you know, you're then going to have to go and fight the other top guys. In other words, he was almost insinuating that Adam Azim, who's only had 10 fights, just doesn't have the experience level to then kick on after that, and they don't want to rush him. That's how I took it. But here's the problem. When you're going to undermine a guy like ISMAEL BARROSO, who's very good at getting on the back foot and setting you up for counter shots, go and ask O'Hara Davis. Don't insult people's intelligence by making out that this guy's no good and we deal with him, but, you know, we don't really want to do that. If he fought like that, the way he fought tonight against ISMAEL BARROSO, he may not have survived because he was being made to leap into shots and overreach and fall into shots. Against a puncher like Barroso, he might not get through that fight. So it's a learning fight. He's still in the learning periods, Adam Azim. Don't get me wrong. He's the EBU champ. He's, like I said, he's ranked 30th in the world by BoxRec. He's going to have a higher ranking with the governing body than that because he's got that EBU belt. And he's coming along really nicely. He's a very, very good athlete. He's explosive. His offensive game when he's up against a target that isn't particularly mobile is very, very good indeed. But he is learning on the job. So don't get too carried away with where Adam Azim is just yet. He is a guy that's learning. He is a guy that has a high ceiling. And although I'm critical of the comments of Shane McGuigan, Shane is a superb trainer. So he's with the right guy and I'm sure he will continue to develop. Moving on from that, let's talk about Ben Whittaker. I have no idea why people have this issue with Ben Whittaker. I'm going to become a Ben Whittaker fanboy if it carries on like this because I absolutely love watching this dude fight. He's so entertaining. And I know a lot of people are out there saying, Chris, he's fighting guys that are, you know, bums and he's showing off. And KHALID GRAIDIA went a distance with Karol Talma, with Ezra Taylor, with Dan AZEEZ and Zach Parker. Well, tonight he got stopped by Ben Whittaker. And he got stopped by Ben, who had been schooling him in the fight, who had been playing with him in the fight, and who was showboating. It's not like he was putting it on him and really putting incessant pressure and he broke him down. He was picking sporadic moments to let his hands go. Now, the truth is, I don't think he's the type of fighter that would ever try and fight a pressure fighting style. That's his style, right? But the point is, the fact that he's able to fight in that manner and still be able to pick the right moments to put it on you and select good body shots and stuff like that to be able to know when to break you down, as well as being able to showboat, that's entertainment, man. And I know in the UK, fight fans tend to prefer humility rather than a guy who's a little bit cocky, but you need a little bit of everything, in my opinion. And, you know, when it comes to Ben Whittaker, people often confuse, in my opinion, arrogance and cockiness. They're two different things. An arrogant person is someone that looks down on others with contempt. He almost puts people down. A cocky guy is a guy that loves himself and puts himself on a pedestal. It's different really to mugging other people off and being disrespectful to others. Although I've always said, I don't judge a fighter when he does that to other fighters. How are they with fans? That's how I judge fighters. How are they with a journalist and stuff like that? Don't judge him the way he is with other fighters. At least that's my take on it. Well, Ben Whittaker is a very nice guy to the average Joe, but you also saw when he was commentating tonight for the main event, Buatsi and Aziz, he was actually very complimentary of their work, where they were doing well. He was talking honestly about where they needed to improve. And he's been saying all week, I believe I beat both of them now. So although he's confident, he's actually not disrespectful. So I really don't see why people don't like the entertainment factor that he brings. His balance, his anticipation, the speed in which he does things, and he's able to land. There was one moment where he landed this hook and then I think it was a corkscrew uppercut and then pulled out. How he got out the way of that attempted trigger counter, I'll never know. He was in the danger zone for too long to let go of his own shots to then pull out without getting caught. He had no right to not get punished for that. It's just really enjoyable stuff, man. And I'm well on the hype train for Ben Whittaker. I can't wait to see him finally step up. He is ready for that. But like I said, there are certain learning fights. And in your first 15 fights, however talented you are, there are things you need to learn. You need to learn about how to dictate tempo and pace yourself over 12 rounds and stuff like that. Let me know what you think about Ben Whittaker and his ceiling and all the things we've chatted about today. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.